talk about specific areas that we look at when we get an application for listing, which probably most of the members may not be aware, and I think will be a good forum for us to understand some of the key areas that I think applicants may think that when an application comes to regulators, it tends to delay. So we want to build on that and explain why sometimes we might have a little bit of a pushback or conversations on specific areas of application. So I do not want to belabor on what a REIT is, because I believe all the members understand what a REIT is. What I want to talk about is the listing process and what are the listing applications. What I just want to indicate is that currently we don't consider ESG requirements for listing, but I think going forward into the future we may be requiring some of the areas for applicants to look at, especially about the kind of, if it's a D rate, then what are the specific requirements for a building? Is it a smart building? Is it a building that is going to reduce the carbon footprint? Is it a building that is going to conserve energy and everything? So currently we are not considering that, but it's something that we might consider into the future. So maybe I need a working mic. I think I will be struggling for me. Sorry about that. So as I said, I'm not going to belabor on the rates. But I think from where we sit, I think we should be prepared in the next phase of D-rate. I think currently what we have, the rate that we have, both D-rate and REITs, is more of apartments, maybe commercial buildings. Maybe going to the future, we may have maybe consider maybe warehouses, looking at maybe data centers and all that. So for listing, I think these are just the key requirements for listing. I'll go into details if time allows on what require. So for listing, there are the two different rates, the D rate and the I rate. There'll be specific requirement that for every issuer, if you're listing a D rate, you will only be required to get an approval from CMA. And what that means is when you're making an application for listing, you're supposed to make a simultaneous application to both the CMA and the NSE. So what the NSE does is we review the application, and then we submit our no objection to the CMA to allow for the application to go through. Of course, there will be minimum requirement for listings for D rate. I think that number changed from 5 million to 100,000. And then we also, when it comes to I rate, there will be specific requirements for restricted offers. They may be listed or not listed. What that means is for restricted offers, you can bring them for listing in the main exchange, or you can also bring them to our USB platform. And then for if it's listed, then you also need to get an approval from the CMA. So those are the specific numbers for listing. I think for minimum subscription for D rate moved from 5 million to 100,000. And then for float requirement, of course, for listing the main market for all the counters, whether it's a rate or whether it's an equity, there's a minimum requirement for free float to allow for ownership to be transferred from one owner or shareholder to the other. So apart from the main, for what we previously called a gems market, where the minimum requirement was 15%, for the rates and the equities market, there's a minimum requirement for 25%. Of course, sometimes we might give applicants some time for them to put their books together. So that does not really prevent issuers to come and list in the market. The same will apply to the I rate. So what's the process for listing? Once you make an application, then the most important thing is because the rate, the reason for the existence of a rate is because of the underlying asset. So we pay a lot of attention on the underlying property. We are interested on the ownership documents. We are interested, especially for leasehold properties, we are interested in the time of that lease. Sometimes you might bring a property which has only 2 years remaining. That for us presents a risk to the market, so we might have a conversation about that for leasehold property. And then based on that, then we are able to advise other parties based on the requirement. Of course, for every application, we require valuations, so we require within the application, we must get a reporter from the property valuer. The property manager is also supposed to provide a list of all the properties that will be under the REIT. And again, for the issuer, they are supposed to provide the reporting accountant's report, the legal advisor's report, which I think gives an overview of the application. Then once you provide all this information, and we have been able to provide feedback to CMA, then we allow the listing of the REIT. So basically, this is just a summary of what we normally do. I think we give feedback to CMA, we do after the approval, then the listing happens. And then the most important thing is after the issue has come to the market, then what comes later on is now the continuing listing obligation after the issuer has come in. So the most important thing for the existing issuers is about disclosures. And those, for financial statements, of course, the statements should be as per the IFRS standards. And we require for annual reports to be provided 4 months after the end of the financial year. For the interim financials, we require the reports should be provided 2 months after the end of the financial year. Of course, all the information that has come to the board of this specific issuer, then they should be released to the market within 24 hours and within non-trading hours. The other aspect is all communication to the issuers has to be approved by the CMA, and it has to be released to us for it to go to the market during our trading hours. And the reason is to protect all the investors, because we want all the investors to have information at the same time. Any changes in auditors, changes in hundreds of the REIT managers, that has to be communicated to the NSE and the CMA. There's always been a big problem in application fees. And it has been a big conversation within the market, both on rates and also on equities. And one thing that we have discovered is for most of the listing fees, these fees are within the control of the issuers. So when you look at these fees which are applicable to the issuers, you find that most of the fees are negotiable. The rest, like the CMA rate approval fees, I think is a maximum of 12.5 million, and the NSE is a maximum of 1.5 million. The rest, you can negotiate. But the problem that we are facing is that the issuers are saying listing is expensive. And I'll give you an example of an application outside the REIT where you find an issuer, the total cost of listing was 200 million. But you find that leeway of negotiating over 190 million, because the rest of the fees less than 15 million was coming to the CMA and the NSE. So what I'm trying to say is for the issuers, it's always good to also try and negotiate the fees that you are paying to the advisors, whether they are the legal advisors, whether they are reporting accountants, the REIT manager, the trustees, and all the other parties, including the property managers, to ensure that you're able to reduce the cost of the application. Of course, we'll continuously look over other ways of trying to minimize the impact of the issuers. But that has to be, it's a process that we need to start and try to see whether do we come to a place where we can limit the fees that is charged to specific professionals. Of course, that's a long shot. So basically what I'm saying, you find a way of negotiating the fees with the issuers. So that marks the end. I just need to go into details because I still have a few minutes just to belabor the few areas that I spoke about when you're making an application. And the biggest problem is always own valuation. And remember, the valuations for an application is what informs the listing price. And that's is always the problem, the challenge when it comes to listing, because the issuer always has a price. Of course, we believe you understand your business. We believe you understand the properties that you have. But again, we're also looking at the underlying valuations. Do they really support the listing price that you have? So we always look at a number of factors, whether the valuations method that you have been using for you to come up with the listing price makes sense. Of course, it's a process of negotiation. It's up to the issuer now to prove to us that if you are saying you are listing a high rate, for example, at 20 shillings, then do we have the underlying assets support that? Do your valuations method support that? And then you need to justify all the assumptions that you have in the valuation. So that's always the biggest part in application, because at the end of the day, for the listing to happen, then you must have a listing price. Of course, we still have to negotiate in terms of the valuation. Of course, if you are holding a leasehold property, and that property has maybe 10 years to the end of the lease, then that increases the risk for that application. Of course, we still have to agree on the valuation based on those different factors, and then from there we should be able to agree. So unless there are no further questions, I think I'll end it at that point.
There is. You could tackle that as I take the mic round as well. Someone is asking, does RAC have their own panel of valuers to use when listing a REIT? Go ahead.
No, I think for RAC, I don't know whether I can answer for RAC, but what I'm saying is, I think for valuers, there must be, there's a regulator if I'm not wrong, but I think there's value. You don't just come to the market and do valuations, and then. Okay, so for the CMA and the NSE, there is a maximum. For NSE, the maximum is 1.5 million. Whether the application is maybe worth of 2 billion or maybe 1 trillion, it's still a maximum of 1.5 million. For CMA, the amount is quite high, but I think it's capped at the 12.5 million. For other players, reporting accountants, legal advisors, property managers, valuers, we have no control over those valuers. But I know there are other markets where now the exchange can actually admit specific professionals into the exchange, such that if you want to list in the exchange, then you're only supposed to choose those specific, maybe reporting accountants. For example, if you have KPMG, the big four, KPMG, PwC as members who are supposed to bring in an issue to the market, then you cannot go to another accountant. We are there to reach there. It's something that we need to explore so that we're able to reduce the fees to the members. So the easier ways to get a panel of professionals, admit them as part of the panel, and then we allow our members to choose within that panel. And it's something that we really need to look at if we are to reduce the cost of listing. The other areas, like the cost to incur for advertising and everything, that's purely under your control. And what you basically need to look at is tax. Whether are you allowed to factor that when you are doing your annual returns. So basically that's what you need to look at.
Has there been any interest in foreign companies wanting to list USD REITs? You're looking for the person.
Okay, we have had some interest, so we're still having some conversation with some of the interested parties. We'll see what happens once we are able to agree how to go about this. But there are some interests.
All right. Can a company or firm person be a trustee and manager?
I need to confirm this, but I doubt. I doubt. It has to be a professional registered organization. But looking in the Company Act where you can have maybe one player and the LLP, I'm not a legal practitioner, but I think it's something that we need to confirm. The most important thing is you must be licensed by the CMA. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
All right, Titus, I'm going to open the floor for some people who type in was something. So please go to the stage there to answer it from there.
Actually, it's on the fees, and I can see it there. So, but the fees based on a percentage of the asset, underlying asset, or it's just a figure that was plugged in there? By this I mean the CMA and NSC. So is there, you say that's the ceiling, is there a floor? And why wouldn't this be negotiable as well? And I mean, this can be a very huge barrier of entry, because if you have an asset under $1 billion, and you're talking about maximum of up to 10%, I think in terms of fees, forget about the negotiables, the fixed ones, eating a huge chunk of that would be a barrier. But back to the question, what is the basis of those fees, especially for the two institutions, and is there a floor?
I think for the NSC, there's a basis, and for NSC it's based on the nominal value of the units or the shares that are being listed, and then there's a cap at 1.5 million. So you find maybe based on the specific, we get the valuation, the number of units coming to the market multiplied by the nominal price, and then we apply 0.1%, and then you have a cap. If you are coming into the main market, the floor is $500,000 and maximum is 1.5 million. So if you are listing, if the fee is below $500,000, we charge you the $500,000. If your fee is between $500,000 and 1.5 million, we will charge you the fee within that. If your fee is 1.5 and above, where there is 20 million, we will charge you 1.5 million. So we have a floor and we have a ceiling, a limit. For the CMA, they use the market price, the listing price that you are going to use, and they have their own limit. Of course, I cannot speak for the CMA. For NSC, that's, I'm not in business. For us, we are regulators. We are strictly dependent from the rest of the business team. I think they should be able to comment on that, because our interest is just the protection of the investors and have the application come to the market.
All right, Titus, there's a quick one here. Is there a chance for COPs to be encouraged to list their holding as a group, I think cooperatives, to list as a group?
No, I think the most important thing, if you are coming to the market and the existing regulation, you need to structure the units as per the requirement of the regulations, where you are supposed to have the specific players structuring the properties within these specific organizations. So basically, you need to get your trustees, appointing your REIT managers, and then putting all those properties under REIT. So you just need to find a way out. You cannot just come directly as a co, but you need to get the properties within these specific entities, have your trustees and your rate managers arranging these specific properties under a specific rate, and then come and list a rate into the market. Because you are not listing a cooperative, you are listing the rate. And that rate will be having the specific assets, which probably will be transferred from the ownership of these cooperatives.
Let me see whether there's a burning one. There's one there.
Good morning, everybody. I think I have to return, I can't remember your name, but I have to return you back to Titus. I have to return you to the two questions which have just been asked. I'm the one who posted them. I think you're being escapist a bit on your comments. Like that one for cooperatives. What I'm trying to say is, if you check the whole of this town, forget any other place, you will see a building associated with a circle. What I was trying to say is, when you look at, they are holding illiquid assets. And I see an opportunity for these organizations to unlock some of these funds. And that's why I was asking, Is it a journey you guys might need to look at? You know, they may not necessarily need to come to you. Is NSC looking at that as an opportunity to assist those institutions to unlock those kind of funds? That's number one. The other question I asked you, I don't know why it's saying anonymous, but I'm wondering why. I want to ask again, what would you call a successful raise in this market? Having watched the various issues which have been done, you might need to comment for us what you call has been a successful one. I would like to get that comment. But the fee for professionals, or rather, could you guide us and tell us in terms of percentage based on the past history of listing, what is that percentage tied to the maximum, to the issued value, the professional fees in particular, because that figure is blocked. And we know if you say, go to PwC, go to Lloyd Masika, you know how much these guys will charge. So what sort of, are you guys thinking of bringing an aspect of a capping on them?
Okay, I was not trying to run away from a question. Let me go straight to the point. On point number one, you're saying there are a number of properties held by cooperatives. If there is an existing property somewhere, then what I said was that property can be structured into a rate and it can come to the market. So the short answer is the product, that property can be listed. What I was trying to explain is the structure of the listing, because what you are listing is a rate, it's not the cooperative. So you need to have someone to structure those properties in one rate unit and come to the market. Yes, that what I'm saying is the property can be listed as a rate in the exchange. That's the answer. And then the answer number two about the percentage of listing fees versus I don't have all the answers, but I'll give you an example. And I can't remember what was the percentage for the rate, but I can remember the one for East African Breweries bond raise. The East African Breweries, of course, it's not a rate, it's a bond. They raised over 11 billion. And the total cost of that raise was around over 200 million, I think 230 million. That was almost, I think, 11%. And when we looked at the fees that make up that 200, over 190 was fees goes to specific professionals whom you could negotiate with. So out of the almost 230, you find the fees that went to NSC was 1.5 million. And the fees that went to CMA was 11 billion. The rest of the fees was fees going to reporting accountants, transaction advisors, and also the fees that were going to other players that you could actually negotiate with. So the range, depending on the size of the entity, ranges from around 1.5% to somewhere around 11%, depending on the size of the issue. And again, the beauty is, if you look at our application, we always demand for the issuers to disclose that information within the IAM. So if you look for the IAM, you find they will list the cost going to all these service providers. So any application, if you look at the final IAM, which is available online, you see all the costs. Specific costs going to NSC, costs going to CMA, advertising costs going to transaction advisors, reporting accountants, legal advisors, and also the receiving banks. All the costs are always disclosed in the memorandums. So it's a public information. Of course, I agree, and I know your fear is, your concern is the cost is too high. But as I said, those are fees that can be negotiated. And of course, you find a way to work around it. So I hope I've not escaped again. I hope I've not run away from answering a question. this time round.
Titus, I'll ask you to as well, because you'll be around, you can see him behind the tent. Okay, this is not a tent. We can see him later on, even during tea, but the man.
You
he's
can
smiling.
actually come over to the office. We can talk. And the beauty is for the applicants, you can come to the office. We can have a chat. You can come to the business team and be there. You can also see how we can support you, because we encourage one-on-one engagement with the issuers. But for us, as I said previously, because of the conflict of interest that might have, we always advise for applicants at the initial stages, you go through the business teams, because at the end of the day, there will be, for lack of a better word, there will be some fights here and there between us and you as we try to go through the application. But we are open to business. We are willing to walk the journey with the issuers. We are willing to go the extra mile to support you, to make sure that you are not stuck. And we are open to new ideas. We are not stuck in the past. Yeah.
Let's appreciate Titus with a clap, please. Thank you so much.